Make sure you guys smash that subscribe button if you guys are fans of the content being posted onto this channel to always be in the loop with more content similar to this, and be sure to hit the video up with a like if you're enjoying the content. And with that being said, let's begin. So with Scream 5 now having to be set in stone in making its debut in January of 2022, so many fans within both the Scream and the horror community seem to be begging multiple questions on whether or not Scream 5 is going to deliver in every aspect, and not only having to be a slasher slash horror movie that's going to exceed being meta, but mostly seeing how Scream 5 is going to connect to the original story of Wes Craven, and originally how the series began back in 1996 in setting the stages for what could perhaps be the renaissance of the Scream franchise and having to follow suit ever since the original movies came before it, as we saw back in 2011 how Scream 4 had made its debut, and with mixed feelings on people's reactions on the narrative and the overall logic of what Scream 4 introduced. Here today we have some very cool information courtesy of Screen Rant and BloodyDisgusting.com that indicates that Scream 5 is actually going to up not only the body count within the film, but it's also going to have a huge connection to the legacy trio that was Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, and of course Dewey Riley, as of course courtesy of ScreenRant.com. The following information goes on to state, and I quote, "The official Scream account had shared a new set photo that sends a pretty scary message. The image shows a large pool of blood with a stained knife lying beside it as someone tries valiantly to clean it all up with a single paper towel. There were only a few drops of blood to clean up on set," the post reads. Immediately following it up with a familiar bolded kicker, official sources stated that this is false and misleading, which of course is a gag in reference to the president, but the point of this picture is to illustrate the narrative that all of this blood that's being shown on the floor is only, quote, a few drops of blood to clean up on set, which basically goes on to tell us that this movie is going to be very, very gory, or at least that's the overall implication, as it then goes on to continue. Like any good slasher, Scream 5 is destined to have an epic body count. Could it even surpass those of the past films? Possibly. After all, as the long-awaited 5th installment and the first without Craven, Scream 5 really has to make a bloody splash. Between the connections to the previous movies and the fact that the proper title is Scream, it is very clear that they are giving it their all. So this goes on to further illustrate the point that they very well just might easily up the body count just based on what's going to happen in this film. As it then continues, production on Scream 5 wrapped up in mid-November, so new details about the movie and its plot could emerge soon. Scream 5 isn't slated for release until January 2022, which I think is a big mistake, but it continues, which is quite a long ways from now. Fans will surely be given fresh teases and details to help tide them over in the meantime. There are still so many questions to be answered, such as what role will Sidney play in the movie, what are the new characters like, and most importantly, who is the new Ghostface? Though don't expect the last one to be answered before the credits roll. So this point is interesting, especially with the last question, because it is also heavily emphasized that nobody is ever going to see the new Ghostface coming, and especially in Scream 5, it is going to be a massive revelation in finding out who this is. But it's also interesting to note that the young woman that's set to return to Woodsboro after, of course, learning of the mysterious crimes and vicious chain of events happening, this young girl, perhaps by the name of Sam, whose boyfriend named Richie also comes along with her to go to Woodsboro, also begs the question as to what kind of motives this Ghostface has. Is he some kind of a doppelganger? Does he want to somehow mimic the chain of events that have happened back in 1996, 1997? So it's interesting to see this, and more importantly, does this new Ghostface actually have ulterior motives for Sidney, for Gale, for Courtney? So it's also very interesting to see how much they're keeping on the low, only because this movie could open up the door to actually see for the first time how Sidney Prescott could be written off for good this time, or maybe a different narrative be inserted to where we understand now that this movie, Scream 5, or known as Scream now, had taken inspiration from movies such as Halloween 2018, had taken inspiration from other movies as well, in setting the stages for giving us a definitive Scream film that directly follows the events that have transpired prior. But the question here is, does the release date of January 2022 make sense? Only because it is universally known within the horror fandom that once a movie comes out in January, specifically a horror movie drops in January, it tends to be absolute garbage. It tends to be absolutely terrible. So it doesn't make any sense to see how much buildup this movie seems to have and how much this movie seems to be including only for it to come out in January, right? So this could be a bad thing if the movie is slated to be released in January, but courtesy of Screen Rant, we also have additional information as to the overall timeline in which this takes place, as it goes on to state Scream or Scream 5 takes place a decade after the events of Scream 4, which is a long stretch of time as far as a horror movie sequels are connected. Each sequel in the series examines the new layers of trauma that are present in Sidney, Gale, and Dewey. Scream continues to examine if these characters have been able to find peace, as it quotes, "For us, your mind spins a yarn on what the lives of those characters could be after the fourth installment," explains Radio Silence's Tyler Gillett on Screen Rant as, quote, "We are also pleasantly surprised when we read the script, who they are and how they're handled. We think the audience is going to really be surprised and really be happy with it." Which, in all honesty, to me, this just goes as far as to show that I think that they're trying to allude to the idea that this is the last time that we might actually see Sidney Prescott, Dewey, and the original cast, only because you can now pass the torch on over to the Carpenter sisters and kind of have their plotline play out as the movie franchise continues if they decide to do Scream 6 and anything beyond that, but that all varies on the overall success of Scream 5, which again, you also have to beg the question, what is the narrative for Sidney Prescott's character in this movie? Is she going to be the victim? Is she going to be the spectator? Or, as many other people have theorized, is she going to be the one that's going to be the killer? Which is very highly unlikely to look at, but not outside the realm of possibility. So when looking at the overall scope of what this movie is going to introduce, it's going to play heavily off of the narrative and the ideas of what Scream 2 had done by utilizing the trio, by utilizing the OG characters, but by also instilling a level of fear in this movie and a level of suspense that quite frankly hasn't been seen in quite some time within the Scream franchise, which is a good thing objectively, but this also begs the question on whether or not Ghostface is a male or female, because that varies on a lot of things. There have been many prognosticators out there talking about how maybe Stu has a younger brother, and perhaps maybe Stu's brother is the killer, perhaps maybe it is someone within Sidney's circle that once again is trying to get back at her. There have been many other people that suggested the idea that Billy has relatives, or perhaps Billy himself is still alive, which again, when looking at that narrative objectively, it doesn't seem to make sense. But then again, the reviewers of the Scream 5 script did say that the script is fantastic and it's very pleasant and gory and bloody and introduces lots of revelations and lots of surprises that hopefully enough the fandom will like and enjoy when in reference to the original characters, when in reference to the newer characters being added, which of course, based on the information that we have right now, the newer cast members are going to play a very, very important role going forward, only because the older lifelines to the franchise aren't going to be around much longer, which means that ultimately at some point we are going to see the torch be passed onto the newer characters and seeing where the story progresses going forward. But by the end of all of this, are you guys stoked, ready, and excited to see what Scream or Scream 5 has to offer? Who do you think Ghostface perhaps is? Is it someone that we've seen before? Is it someone that's perhaps related to one of Sidney Prescott's, past former members? Maybe Stu's brother? Maybe it's someone that Sidney is currently related to perhaps? What are your overall thoughts on the idea of having this be the original cast's last movie? Perhaps maybe writing off and getting rid of specific people and characters, perhaps maybe, hell, even Sidney Prescott and having her officially be killed off in the movie. Do you guys think that this makes logical sense and that it could carry on over by passing the torch on over to the newer cast members and allowing the Carpenter sisters to carry the franchise forward? And lastly, do you guys think that this movie is going to be possibly the best Scream movie within the franchise thus far, just based on the overall narrative and based on the overall hype surrounding it? Or do you guys believe that this movie is simply going to flop? So again, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for your time. If of course you guys are new to the channel, then I do encourage you guys to smash that subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up by slapping that like button down below if you guys are simply stoked and excited to see what Scream 5 has to offer. Tune back in for more. Hopefully this movie has a logical approach to the overall narrative they're trying to portray, and hopefully we are going to get, if anything, the best Scream movie within the franchise if they play their cards right, but we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. So again, thank you all so much for watching. Tune back in for more, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys down in the comment section below. Have a great day, everybody, and take care. Peace.